Namaskar children, how are you all? So this is Mamta Tomar with another chapter of social science. So today, before starting off the session, let me ask you a few questions. My question is, how many monitors do you have in your class? I believe the probable answer is going to be maybe 3, 4 or sometimes 5 monitors also. So you might be having one monitor as the class monitor to maintain discipline, another monitor for maybe copy collection, monitor number 3 for maybe maintaining the class blackboard, and monitor number 4 maybe who's responsible for the smart class and the smart board. So now the question arises that why do we need to have so many monitors? Why can't we do with just one monitor? So the answer, I believe, is simple and you all know it: to improve the efficiency of work. So obviously, if work is divided amongst a number of people, efficiency increases. Apart from that, there is one more reason for having so many monitors. If we just have one monitor, that single monitor might become a dictator. He might start bossing around. Yes, he might try to dominate the class. However, in case we have a number of monitors, there will be division of power. Yes, no single person, no single student will become all powerful. So this is the crux of the chapter that we're going to start off. It is Democratic Politics, chapter number 1, Power Sharing. So the chapter is a very easy and a very interesting one, which begins with the stories of Belgium and Sri Lanka. And we'll see through the chapter, we'll see how both Belgium as well as Sri Lanka, they both have populations which are ethnically diverse, right? So we'll find, Sri Lanka and Belgium, both of them, because they have diverse populations, we'll see how both of them, they handle this diverse population. And both of them are handling these diverse population differently, and the result is also very different. So this is what we're going to learn in this chapter: power sharing. What is power sharing? Why do we need to share power? And different forms of power sharing. So children, this is the map of Belgium, which is a small country in Europe. And it has common boundaries with France, Netherlands, Germany and Luxembourg. And we can see that it is occupied, the population of Belgium is ethnically diverse. The majority of the population, that is nearly 59% of the people, they are Dutch speakers and they live in the Flemish region. Another 40% of the people who are French speakers, they have occupied the Wallonia region, and the remaining small percentage of the population are German speakers. So this explains the composition of the Belgian population. Now we'll see that the Dutch speakers, who are in majority in the whole country, are in minority in its capital, that is Brussels. So Brussels has a very unique composition of population. The French speakers in Brussels are in majority and the Dutch speakers are in minority. Now, there were a number of reasons because of which the Dutch speakers did not like the presence of the French speakers in their country. Some of these reasons were that the French speakers were rich. Apart from that, the French speakers, they got the benefit of education and development much before the Dutch speaking community got these. So as a result, we'll see, how there were certain conflicts between these two major communities living in Belgium. And over the chapter, we'll see how Belgium is able to settle the conflicts with a method which is known as accommodation. Another country that we're going to talk about in this chapter is Sri Lanka, an island country which is India's neighboring country also. So Sri Lanka became independent in 1948. Yes, and we can see again the ethnic communities that are a part of the population of Sri Lanka. So majority of the people in Sri Lanka, they are Sinhalas. They are the Sinhalas, yes, and they are Buddhist by religion. And they make a majority of 74% of Sri Lanka's population, right? The next major section of Sri Lanka's population is the Tamil population, the Tamil speakers who comprise of 18% of the total population of Sri Lanka. The Tamil speakers, they are Hindus as well as Muslims, yes, and they are divided into two. That is the Tamil speakers who were originally Sri Lankan, and then there were Indian Tamils who came from India and they settled in Sri Lanka. They were taken from India to Sri Lanka as indentured labor. There were a small number of people who comprised of Muslim community, right? Now again we're going to talk about, we are going to compare these two countries, that is Belgium and Sri Lanka, and we'll see how both these countries have handled the issue of ethnic diverse communities in their countries, yes, and what is the result of the method which is used by both these countries to handle their populations. So now children, we're going to talk about certain steps that were taken by the Sri Lankan government, and these steps, they led to alienation of the Sri Lankan Tamils, and they established a majoritarian government in Sri Lanka. So as we discussed earlier, that Sri Lanka became independent in 1948, and the democratically elected government adopted a majority, it adopted a number of steps that established a majoritarian government in Sri Lanka. So according to an act of 1956, Sinhala was considered as the only official language disregarding Tamil. The government followed preferential policies that favored Sinhala applicants for university positions and government jobs. That means in case of a job vacancy, yes, the government would give preference to a Sinhala applicant as compared to a Tamil applicant. Apart from that, the third major step that was taken to establish majoritarian government there was that the state would protect and foster Buddhism. So, as a result of all these steps, the Tamils, they started feeling alienated, yes, and they started feeling that the Sinhala government was not sympathetic towards their religion and their language. So they started demanding certain rights. They wanted regional autonomy. Yes, they also wanted Tamil to be regarded as an official language, and they wanted equality of opportunity for education as well as job. So, the Sinhala government was not at all sympathetic. It did not consider the demands of the Tamils. And as a result, the Tamils, they started demanding a separate Elam. Elam means state. So when these demands were not accepted by the Sinhala government, there was a civil war between the Tamils and the Sinhalese, and we'll see that this civil war led to a lot of bloodshed in Sri Lanka and a lot of economic crisis as well. See, we have seen in economics chapter 1 how Sri Lanka is doing much better than India, in terms of if it is per capita income or health or even education. But it was because of the civil war that there was thousands and thousands of people who became homeless. There was so much of bloodshed and there was so much of economic loss in Sri Lanka. So this was the result of the majoritarian measures taken by the Sri Lankan government, which led to a lot of conflicts between the two major communities, that is the Tamils as well as the Sinhala people. Now let's see how Belgium handles its ethnically diverse population. So there were a number of amendments that were made in the Belgian constitution to ensure an arrangement that would accommodate the two major communities, that is the French speakers as well as the Dutch speakers. So let us discuss some of the elements of the Belgian model. The constitution of Belgium, it prescribed that the Dutch speaking and the French speaking ministers shall be equal in the central government, right? And there would be some special laws that would be requiring a majority members from each linguistic group. That means important decisions could not be taken up by a single community unilaterally. The second major step that was taken by the Belgian government was that many of the powers of the central government were given to the state governments. So as a result, the state governments, they were not subordinate to the central government. They enjoyed powers of their own. Now, the third point which says that, now see, we already discussed that Brussels had a unique composition. The Dutch speaking community, who were in majority in the whole country, were in minority in Brussels. So as a result, we'll see that Brussels, the French speaking and the Dutch speaking ministers were again the same, because the Dutch speakers had accepted equal number of French ministers in the central government ministry. The French speaking people, they accepted equal number of Dutch speaking ministers in the government of Brussels. Brussels had a separate government of its own. The last part of the accommodative method that was used by Belgium was that, apart from the central and the state governments, there was a third kind of government, that was the community government. So each of the community had its own community government, that is the Dutch speakers, the French speakers and the German speakers. Yes, and this government had the power regarding cultural, educational and language related issues. So because of this model of accommodation, Belgium was able, in fact Belgium has been able to establish peace and security in its country, where all different communities, mainly the French speakers and the Dutch speakers, are living in complete harmony. So children, let's now move on to a very important question, that is, why is power sharing so desirable? So for this we have two sets of reasons, that is the prudential reasons and the moral reasons. The prudential reasons come from the brain, reasoning, and moral reasons are based on values. The prudential reasons say that power sharing leads to lesser chances of tensions and conflicts. Point number 2, it says that power sharing leads to greater political stability. Yes. Point number 3 says that power sharing leads to greater amount of unity. So it says that power sharing, if there is greater concentration of power in one hand, a domination of one section of the society by the other, it might seem to be very tempting in the short run, but in the long run it brings disunity to the country. It brings damage not only to the minority sections of the society but also to the majority sections of the society. Then we move on to the next reasons of power sharing, that is the moral reasons. And the moral reasons, the first major reason says that democracy is a government which is of the people, by the people and for the people. So power sharing is a very spirit of democracy, right? And people who have to live with the effect of the decisions, they should be able to understand how decisions have been taken. They should be the source of all power, right? People should have the right to be consulted in how major decisions have been taken. So they say that a legitimate government is one where citizens through participation acquire stake in the system. So this is explaining why power sharing is desirable. So here we are with the next part of the chapter, that is forms of power sharing in India. So we'll see that modern democracies have various power sharing arrangements, and the first among them is power shared among different organs of the government at the same level. This is known as horizontal distribution of power. So in this we'll see how power is shared among different organs of the government such as the legislature, executive and the judiciary. So all these organs, they lie at the same level, however they exercise different powers. So this ensures, this horizontal distribution of power, it ensures that no single organ exercises unlimited powers. Each organ is checked by the other, which results in a balance of power among various institutions. So as a result, this is also known as a system of checks and balances. So we can see some examples how one organ keeps a check on the other. For example, the executive enjoys official power, but it is answerable to the legislature. The legislature has a right to make or amend laws, but it is answerable to the people. Next form of power sharing is power shared among governments at different levels. So power can be shared among the central government and the state governments. In case of a third tier of government, it is shared between the central, the state and the local governments as well. So this is known as federal division of power. Again, it helps for a proper distribution of power, and it does not allow one single level of government to become all powerful or to become more powerful. All different levels of government, they function autonomously. That is, they do not work under the dominance of one particular level of the government, that is the central government. All three levels of government, they have autonomous powers. And the central government cannot dictate its terms to the state governments. So this is known as federal division of power. The third form of power sharing is power shared among different social groups such as religious and linguistic groups. An example of such a form of power sharing is the community government in Belgium. Right? So in such a country like India, where we have diversity of populations living together, we have a variety of social, linguistic and caste groups. Power has to be shared among each one of them. And this power shared among different communities, it helps to bring about an accommodation, to bring about unity amongst the people. The policy of reservation is a very good example of this kind of power sharing in India. So because of this, none of the communities feels alienated and India stands united and one. The fourth form of power sharing is power shared amongst political parties, pressure groups and movements. So children, we can see that today we are living in a world of representative democracy where we have a number of political parties that form the government. We nowadays we don't have single party governments, we have coalition governments. And when there is a coalition government, power is shared among a number of political parties. So a number of political parties, they join hands in order to form the government. Hence, instead of a single party government, we now have a coalition government where a number of political parties, they join hands to form the government and share power. We can also see how pressure groups and movements, they share power. So pressure groups, their main aim is to exert influence on the government to take decisions in their favor. So they sometimes enter into the advisory committees of the central government. Yes, and then they try to influence the government decision making process. So this is how power is shared among political parties, pressure groups and movements. So with this, we come to an end of this chapter, children. I hope the chapter is very clear. So here's a brief summary of different forms of power sharing. You can just go through it. It is going to be easy for you all to revise and learn.